Welcome to Sizzle Fantasy Sports, the channel with the most sizzling hot fantasy takes and analysis, presented by your host, Gavin.
Rodgers, clean pocket, throws the middle of the end zone. Devontae, touchdown, and a dagger!
All right, you guys, as promised in my draft guide giveaway announcement video last week, I'm going to be starting to ease back into some fantasy football content for you guys in the next couple weeks or so. We're going to be going over some early pre-draft positional rankings at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions. This video specifically will be all about my top 12 quarterbacks, so my QB1s at the current moment heading into next year. You guys, fantasy season is closer than you think. Dynasty leagues, which I would love to have you guys become a part of if you're not already this season, it's right around the corner. It's just about time to start those startup leagues, and it's almost time to be having some rookie drafts if you haven't done those already, if you have an existing Dynasty league. So lots of good stuff to talk about, you guys. By the way, if you're new around here, make sure to head down, click that subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you guys are notified whenever I come out with a new video or piece of content. And go visit my new website, sizzlefantasy.com, where you can get access to my draft guide collection for the 2021 season and see some of the stuff that Eric and I have been putting together and that asset of what we do here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Let's get right into the video and start off with my quarterback one at the moment. All right, getting into my first player on the board here, Patrick Mahomes is not going to surprise anybody at this QB1 overall spot. Pat Mahomes in my consistency ratings that Eric and I have been working on for the season-long fantasy kit that we've been putting together on our website at the bottom of your guys' screen has shown he is one of the most consistent scorers in fantasy football at the quarterback position outside of just Aaron Rodgers. So Pat Mahomes, when you look at him, he's not only the most talented quarterback in the National Football League, but he's also one of the best fantasy players in the NFL. I think Pat Mahomes, going into next season, there's so much going for him. It's undisputable to put him at this first overall quarterback spot. Andy Reid and his play calling is exceptional. He's got himself a top 3 wide receiver option in Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce, in my opinion, is the top fantasy tight end on the board. So Pat Mahomes has great weapons going for him. He's got a great offensive-minded head coach. Maybe the only thing that can slow him down is that offensive line if it's not properly addressed in this year's draft class. But I expect the Chiefs, they're a solid organization, to go out here with Pat Mahomes and make things happen and have a great offense again in 2021. Then at the number 2 spot, I've got Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, similar to Patrick Mahomes, great arm talent, has just enough mobility to be an elite NFL quarterback and be an elite fantasy player. I think Josh Allen's actually quite the underrated rusher. He's actually the best rushing threat on his team, to be quite honest. And the Buffalo Bills use him as their goal line running back, basically. So Josh Allen is snagging away a lot of rushing touchdowns from the running backs in this offense and contributing to his own fantasy production, which is great. We love that out of Josh Allen. You look at his wide receiving options, Stephon Diggs. I've often called it a match made in heaven between a quarterback and wide receiver prospect. This guy, he's able to take the top off of defenses, and just give Josh Allen a great ceiling as a passer. And then, like I said earlier, when you add that rushing game on top of things, Josh Allen becomes a very dangerous weapon. He's a bit less consistent than Pat Mahomes was last year, but Josh Allen has still shown he can put up those elite fantasy numbers. You look at the rest of that wide receiving core and having a stable head coach like Sean McDermott, he's got Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders to throw the football to as well. There's a lot of things going for Josh Allen as well, and that's why he is up there at my number 2 overall QB spot. Then at the number 3 spot, I was really close between Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray here for this 3rd overall position, but I went with Lamar Jackson here, you guys. Over the past 2 seasons, no one has averaged more fantasy points per game than Lamar. He's over 24 points per contest in fantasy football for standard quarterback scoring metrics. So that's pretty insane. Lamar Jackson is an elite and very, very dynamic quarterback. His rushing ability is what sets him apart from the pack because we know he's not an elite passer of the football, but he is just good enough to be able to contribute in that part of the game as well as being a 1,000-yard rusher at the quarterback position year in and year out. So who knows how many years Lamar Jackson will play football. I know it's funny to compare him to a running back. That's basically what the production is that he gives us in fantasy football. But nonetheless, you guys, This guy's dynamic ability is what gives him that elite upside. I would love to see the Ravens give him a strong wide receiver prospect in the draft class, because I do think he is lacking a strong number one option in his offense. But I also think that when we look at guys like Mark Andrews in that offense, it gives him enough ability to produce in the red zone that it's salvageable from a passing perspective. But like I said, you guys, the rushing value is what's going to hit it home for these quarterbacks at the top of the board. That's the trend we are seeing. These guys are able to move and pick up points with their legs, and that's what helps them have this elite fantasy season to push them so high up on top of the board. Kyler Murray at my quarterback 4 spot. He had a great season in 2020. He's another guy who's very dynamic. Quarterback option game is in his playbook and in his repertoire. He is able to, even on the goal line last season, I saw him pull the ball out of the running back's belly and run into the end zone on his own. He had quite a high touchdown count in the rushing department. So Kyler Murray's just as capable of getting it done with his legs. Obviously, he's a bit smaller. He got a bit banged up last season. He plays in the toughest division in football, which might be an issue at times when you're playing the defenses of the Rams and the 49ers twice a year. But Murray, I still think, can produce. His scrambling and the fact that he has an alpha wide receiver 1 to throw the football to, unlike Lamar Jackson, gives him a great boost and maybe even a safer floor. D-Hop obviously is going to be that guy for him that he can depend on, use as a safety blanket, and just chuck the rock to in that air raid offense under Cliff Kingsbury. AJ Green was brought in free agency. I'm not sure how much of a fantasy weapon that's going to be, but I do think having that veteran leadership can't hurt. And then Christian Kirk, obviously, he is able to take the top off defenses and contribute in his own right. We don't know who the starting running back is going to be for this offense. I would like to see someone with some strong abilities go there, because I think there is something to having a balanced offense so that you don't become too predictable. But for the moment, Chase Edmonds is their current RB1 in the depth chart. He's a very good receiving back, so I think that could work out well for Murray as well. At QB5, I've got Aaron Rodgers of my Green Bay Packers. I think it's reasonable to see a decline for Aaron Rodgers this season. 48 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions last season. That's exceptional numbers. Him and Matt LaFleur were excellent last year, but 48 touchdowns is a heck of a count. You're going to see some regression in that category, but the thing I love about Aaron Rodgers is the safety and the consistency is amazing. Aaron Rodgers was the top scorer in the consistency ratings category for the 2020 season, and he's a guy who you can depend on to not turn the football over. Like I said, 48 touchdowns, that's pretty much the sky. Not too many players have ever eclipsed that 50 touchdowns mark, so he almost got there, but I think that number is going to trend back down towards the low 40s, maybe even mid to high 30s. So Aaron Rodgers, like I said, he's probably going to be a guy who you can count on to not lose you fantasy points with losing fumbles and interceptions, but the thing that keeps him higher on this, or keeps him from being higher on this list, is that he doesn't have that dynamic rushing ability in his later stages of his career. You're not going to see him tuck the ball and run as much as we would have maybe 5-7 years ago. So Rodgers, still a very dependable and consistent fantasy option, just not in that 1A tier right now. Russell Wilson's right behind him at quarterback 6 for me. The thing with Russ here, opposed to Aaron Rodgers, is maybe Russ has a higher fantasy season than a guy like A-Rod does, but Russell Wilson is wildly inconsistent. The first 4 or 5 weeks last year, Russell Wilson looked like the far and away quarterback 1 in fantasy football. He was dominant, elite. The touchdown numbers were off the charts. He wasn't throwing interceptions and having turnovers. And then you look at the back half of the season, and he fell apart. He was inconsistent, kind of a train wreck at times. He had some tough games against the Rams and 49ers, but overall, I think that he was just not as dependable. The turnovers, like I said, skyrocketed after that first month of the season. And for the second year in a row, we saw Russ be the early out of the gate MVP favorite and then taper off towards the end of the season and just fall apart, to be honest, in terms of fantasy production. So he's tied to 2 great fantasy wide receivers, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. That's awesome, but I'd like to see Russ become a bit more consistent. And with that offensive line still not being elite, who knows if he still sees some struggles and has those turnovers if he's taking a lot of hits next year. At number 7, this I think is the spot on the list where I think I might turn some heads and have some people kind of surprised at this pick. Justin Herbert, for me, he's a star in the making. This is a guy I believe a lot in. I think he is going to do some great things, not only in the fantasy game, but in the actual NFL game. He is going to bring a lot of W's to the win column for the Los Angeles Chargers organization. This guy's Aaron Rodgers-esque in his ability to make plays outside of the pocket from what I saw in year one. I never saw this coming at Oregon, you guys. I was not a Justin Herbert fan coming into the draft. I had serious doubts about him, but he proved me wrong big time. And I think he might just be one of my favorite guys come fantasy draft season this year to pick up, because I think down here at my quarterback 7 spot, and where I think other fantasy analysts might have him rated lower, the ADP and the value you can stash him up for is going to be very good. So I think you can use a mid-round flyer on this guy to be your QB1, and I think it'll pay off big time. He's got Keenan Allen, one of the better route running wide receivers in the National Football League to throw passes to. Mike Williams is coming back. I'd like to see them add another piece with Hunter Henry departing, but Austin Eckler out of the backfield, he's a solid option. I think in year 2, we see Justin Herbert take some steps forward, and he's in a division where you're going to have to throw the football to keep up with your Kansas Cities. The Las Vegas Raiders secondary is awful, and last year we saw the Broncos have some struggles in the back end. So there's a lot of things I think about Justin Herbert here that are very underrated, and I'd be very excited about picking him this season. That's why he lands so high on my list here at number 7. Then at number 8, Deshaun Watson. I've got him a bit lower than I would typically have him. This is mainly because of the mass questions around him right now. We don't know who Deshaun Watson is going to be playing football for next season. We don't know if Deshaun Watson is going to be playing football next season. We don't know a lot of things about Deshaun Watson. There's been over 20 allegations against him, I believe it is right now. Civil lawsuits filed. I don't know the exact terminology, but Deshaun Watson is under investigation right now from Houston PD for a variety of various charges from citizens that he has interacted with over the past couple of years. There's a chance that we see Deshaun Watson become convicted, or if evidence comes up against him, we may see him taking repercussions for actions that he potentially did or did not commit here. So who knows? There might be some issues with Deshaun Watson's ability to play football next year. Additionally, he swore off the Houston Texans and has stated his desires to never play a snap of football again for them in his professional career. So with all these allegations out there, I think the trade market has kind of dried up for Deshaun Watson. And with the Texans being as stubborn as they are, it might not be too unlikely that they don't move off of him. I think Deshaun Watson will head into training camp as a Houston Texan, or at least contracted by the Houston Texans. I'd be shocked to see him be traded on draft day, but it's still a possibility, I suppose. Nonetheless, here, you guys, if D-Watt is fully available and healthy, he's going to be in that top 5. But for now, with just so many unknowns, he is in the outside the top 5 at my number 8 spot. Then at number 9, you guys, Tom Brady, the ageless wonder. It would be foolish of me to not expect greatness from Tom Brady this season. I know that you can hate Tom Brady all you want, but historically, and obviously no one's done what Tom Brady has done at this age, but historically, quarterbacks coming into the second year of an offense under a competent offensive head coach do a lot better than and show major steps and improvements and growths from that first year. Look at what Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers did between year 1 and year 2 last season. Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, I expect to be very similar. Tom had 40 touchdown passes last year. I think that number may not increase too drastically. Maybe it hovers around the same marker. But what I do think Tom improves at is I think that interception count recedes and comes backwards, therefore losing him less fantasy points in the grand scheme of things. I think he's more comfortable in the offense in year 2. I think Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson, maybe AB's back, Gronkowski. There is a complete slew of weapons for him to use at his disposal, and so many fantastic options for Tom Brady to throw the football to. It's going to be hard for him not to succeed again in year 2, especially coming off that Super Bowl win. So Tom's a guy I'm not doubting this season. And like Herbert, I think all the way down here at my QB9 spot, there could be some great opportunity for very, very solid snagging in the later rounds of your drafts. Then at number 10, Dak Prescott. This is plain and simple, you guys. I love Dak. I'm a big fan of him in fantasy. Last year, he was my guy until he ended up getting hurt, and that's a significant injury. So that's what knocks him down my list here. He's got a 3-headed monster at the wide receiver position. And another thing going for him is that Zeke started catching passes last year, but Dak is just a guy we got to be careful about. I'd pump the brakes a little bit and be cautiously optimistic that he can return to full health and full production, because he was fantastic last season when he was healthy. And he got commitment from Jerry Jones and the Cowboys organization for a long-term deal. But I think that, like I said, with such a significant break in your lower leg, you got to be a bit cautious and just not super bullish on a guy like Dak Prescott coming into a season like this. I love to support him, obviously, and I think that at the right price, he's a fantastic player to go out there and target on your dynasty trade markets if you can get him for a cheap price because of the injury. But I wouldn't be too aggressive with Dak Prescott. I wouldn't overdraft for him in your fantasy leagues, and I wouldn't overpay for him in the trade market in dynasty if that's what you guys are thinking about right now. Then at number 11, Ryan Tannehill, probably the most disrespected and underrated fantasy football quarterback there is out there right now. Ryan Tannehill had a stretch of games from the end of his first season as a Titan going into maybe even all the way through last fantasy season, where Ryan Tannehill was the QB1 producer just because of how elite he was when he was on the football field as a starter. He's had a complete career rewind and rejuvenation since joining the Titans franchise, and that offense is perfectly catered towards him. Derrick Henry is such a good running back, and that running offense is so elite that the play-action game is just ridiculous. A.J. Brown, a wide receiver one dominant player. He's got great stuff to work with. Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis departed in free agency, and I think they need to address that in this draft class to really solidify Ryan Tannehill as staying in this quarterback one discussion. But this is another one of those guys. Absolutely awesome value here. At my QB 11 spot, this guy is going to produce really, really good, solid fantasy starting numbers for your lineups. And this is a guy I went after in a lot of leagues and acquired for very cheap after I lost Dak Prescott due to that injury, as I just mentioned. So Tannehill's a guy I'd love to have on my fantasy team next season. If you guys are even looking for a mid to late round quarterback 2 overall to have on your rosters, Ryan Tannehill's a fantastic option to have. And for a guy who can even tuck it and run it sometimes, he's got a level of dynamicism to his game. And then finally, at number 12, I've got Matthew Stafford, the new quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams. I think Stafford might be a bit of a dark horse here, He's coming into a situation that I think is a better and more beneficial place that he's been in his entire career. I think he gets a better offensive coach than he's ever had in Sean McVay. Maybe the best offensive line he's ever had as a member of the Rams now. He goes into a very stable situation with that wide receiver and tight end core, Tyler Higbee, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. That's a great unit of guys to work around. I think Van Jefferson might even be a sneaky guy in that unit. And then he's got a great run game. Cam Akers is a star. He's going to be fantastic this season. Look out for him in my breakout running backs video. And then he's even got a solid reserve running back like Darrell Henderson. So there's a lot of stuff that Matthew Stafford has not had the luxury of experiencing in his time in the league. I think with the Rams organization here, even in year one, he's still productive enough to be a starting level fantasy player. And while being in a tough division in football, I still think he's on the better end of things, at least being a part of such a great organization. Alrighty, those were my top 12 quarterback rankings for the early fantasy offseason prior to the NFL draft here. If you guys enjoyed today's video, remember, head down, click that subscribe button, and turn that bell on so you guys are notified whenever I come out with new content. And also, you guys, make sure you head over to my website, sizzlefantasy.com. Check out that draft guide collection. Check out SFS Gold. Make an account. You can sign up for free without purchasing any access to any of those draft guides. But we'd love to have you guys around here on the channel and continue to interact with you guys. So, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Peace out.